Ready to begin, and welcome everyone to our Committee of the Whole for Monday, May the 6th. Lovely to see so many people here with us tonight. Every one person and two media? That's great. That's three people in the gallery. Okay. Anyway, I wish to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting tonight on the territory of the Sauk Nation, and we as Council recognize their government as well as their long-standing connection to the lands and the sea and their relationship to the land that continues to this day. So before you tonight, Council, we do have our agenda here. So reminder that in Committee of the Whole, there's no seconder required, so it's just a mover of the motion and then debate. So move adoption by Councillor Beddoes. Any questions? Councillor St. Pierre in the microphone.
Wonder if it was possible to amend the agenda to include something more, or
now would be the time.
Now would be the time. Okay. I had a discussion around the strategic plan with some of our staff today, and I'd like to report back on that and have a little bit of a discussion around some additional items or changes that might be done specifically. But I don't want to move forward with that without.
Would this be appropriate to include?
Is that appropriate?
This, seeing that we have not met on that in an open meeting?
I'm sorry, I was having a hard time hearing what the topic was.
Councillor St. Pierre just wanted to report back on the strategic plan and to potentially discuss a few.
Yeah, well, we haven't put that as an advertised purpose for our meeting, which is typically required of our council procedure bylaw. So I think that might be more appropriate under the councillor updates at our next regular meeting next Monday.
Okay.
As you will.
All right. So motion to approve as presented, please, has been moved. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, so that brings us right into item 4, which is draft council procedural bylaw 728. So Ms. Machada, are you taking this on?
Thank you, Your Worship. So Council received this back in February at a Committee of the Whole just to kind of get the discussion taking place. And so I've noted in the report, I believe there was 7 items there that Council had concern with. So I've clarified them or adjusted the draft bylaw in accordance with those. The first was the clarification around the 2 deputy/acting mayor roles. And I've come across this in the past, and that's why I included it in the bylaw. Our deputy mayor role is what we typically do now by appointing another person to act for a 2-month period each year. When the mayor can't attend something or can't make a meeting, that person acts in that role. The difference with the acting mayor role is if there were to be a long-term absence, whether it be medical leave or just an extended leave, for whatever reason, it gives council the authority to appoint an acting mayor in the absence. The reason I had it come up is we actually had a mayor resign and moved on to a provincial role. And in order to get us up to our election, which was quite a period away, council was able to appoint an acting mayor, so that person can provide continuity for the community and all of the stakeholders for that duration, as well as it allows council, some people are busier than others, and choose somebody who can dedicate time to the role. So that's why that's in there. You can take it out if you like, but we wouldn't use it unless it was absolutely necessary, but it gives us the ability to do that and not have to worry about amending the bylaw to do that if the need arises.
Okay, so maybe we can, if we want to just go through them one by one. So to clarify then, instead of referring, so basically the deputy mayor would be like the acting mayor, like we've treated the acting mayor to date, basically.
Yeah, just a different term, and then the acting mayor is long-term if needed.
Okay, so then should this bylaw be adopted then, would we start that for the rest of this year, or do we have to wait till the December
meeting? No, we wouldn't appoint an acting mayor, only if you were going to be away for an extended period of time and council felt that there was a need to appoint an acting mayor.
Okay.
In addition to the deputy mayor. Like if you're going to be away for a month, right, probably the deputy mayor can step in and handle the duties while you're away. But if for some reason you had to be away for 4 months, and rather than going through 2 or possibly even 3 deputies, they can appoint 1 acting mayor.
Their next pregnancy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, not in the stars. But for example, like right now we have the acting mayor appointments for the rest of this year. Like right now we have Councillor St. Pierre as the acting mayor. So do we immediately start changing that terminology to deputy mayor?
Yes, we can do that, but I don't think anything formal is necessary. It's the way that it's semantics, I guess, for the most part, and we will just start referring to the deputy mayor.
Okay, so it's essentially it's the same thing. It's just deputy mayor would be the correct term instead of acting mayor. Because every year in December we kind of create that schedule for the year. So that's why I wasn't sure if we'd have to wait till December to refresh it. So just so we get the terminology right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Okay. Any questions about that? Deputy mayor? Okay, good. All right, we're good.
The next comment was to limit delegations to 2 per meeting, so that was proposed in your original draft bylaw and continues to be reflected in the draft you have before you this evening. Public hearings being moved to the front of the council agenda or moved to their own meeting. The bylaw, as that was presented to you previously, also did that, have that in it, that the public hearings are at the top of the agenda. And I think we still can have the ability to have the public hearing any other time that we wish. So if we anticipate, like, if we know we have a couple of public hearings coming up and we know we've got a heavy agenda, we can just schedule those for a public hearing on a different night as long as council is available. We don't need to define that specifically unless we wanted to do it every single time. I think we've been accommodating it fairly well. Within the regular meetings, there's been 1 or 2, but we can certainly move those to its own night if necessary. The way the bylaw is written, there's nothing additional required. Okay. Moving the police chief and fire chief quarterly reports to the top of the agenda, so that has been accomplished in the draft bylaw. And so I'll go through these comments, and then I had a couple of extra ones for you to consider. Desire to receive the agenda packages earlier than Thursday prior to council meetings. So due to the tight turnaround times with one council meeting, we've essentially got to have it ready to go by the next Wednesday so that it can go through all of our approvals. We just don't have the time or the resources to be able to produce it earlier than Thursday, given all of the approvals and the sets of minutes that have to be done, et cetera, et cetera. For information, I did check about 8 different municipalities, and most of them get their bylaw or their packages on Friday. There were a few that were end of day Thursday, so I think we're actually on par with the most earliest deliverable for agenda packages. And then the committee of the whole could be scheduled on alternate Mondays or during months with a 5th Monday. So that was discussed on Friday a little bit, but to confirm, the bylaw does allow for committee of the whole meetings on Mondays first and third Mondays of each month. So council could choose to include those in the schedule each December when they set their schedule for the following year. We've always just typically chosen to use the 3rd. But we still have the ability to schedule a special committee of the whole on a Monday if required. So I don't think there's any more changes that are there or needed in order to accomplish that. We have the ability with the way the bylaw is drafted.
Okay, so a couple of things. Councillor McMahon?
Did we just miss one bullet point there where it's the community charter?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just so that the council procedure bylaw reflects what the community charter does regarding elected officials can be absent for 4 meetings.
It's just under the fire chief and police, moving the fire chief and police chief. It's not bold.
Oh, it's not underlined?
No.
Sorry. All right, that's why I missed it. So yes, there was a concern about that, and I believe what the misunderstanding may have occurred is in the bylaw it speaks about committee members. Okay. And we've come across this before. Sometimes you just get somebody on a committee and it's a well-attended committee. We've got a lot of interest for that committee, but you get somebody on it that for one reason or another can't or doesn't show up to consecutive meetings. So that's something that I've had in procedure bylaws before. So if they miss 3 consecutive meetings, they're automatically removed from the committee and we can fill that vacancy. It doesn't have anything to do with council members. The community charter for 4 meetings would still apply. And we don't typically repeat the charter language within a bylaw. So that's, I think, where that misunderstanding may have come from.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if the community charter has any changes, we don't have to change our bylaw because it'll automatically be reflected. Okay. The question, like with the committee of the whole, I think eventually we'll have a proper committee structure in place. So then was thinking that a committee could replace the committee of the whole, and then there may be, depending, right? Then I mean that committees would meet instead of committee of the whole, and committees would report to council. So when we get to that point, the intent would be then maybe we only have committee of the whole on those 5th Mondays because committees meet the rest of the time. Would this allow for that sort of
we could always have a special committee of the whole on those 5th Mondays.
Yeah, because I don't think we need to just, I don't want to meet just because. Yeah. Right?
Well, no, and we don't. We always cancel those committee of the wholes if we don't have anything that needs to be discussed. So, you know, we can certainly look at that when the time comes, you know, once council starts to put more committees in place. But I think it probably serves our purposes the way it's drafted for now. Okay.
And then with the delegations, the time limits would still be 5 minutes. And
that's correct.
Okay. And 2 per meeting. Is there a need to put in anything that would maybe say, like, suppose the delegation requests something and then rather passing a motion that we then have to fix later, is it just good governance that maybe there's a motion that we discuss this at the next meeting or get staff to report back at the next meeting?
I think that's kind of on an ad hoc basis of, you know, it depends what the request is. I'm trying to do a better job of getting, and you'll notice that you've been receiving some correspondence from our head of planning on some upcoming delegations just to familiarize council with the topic rather than kind of receiving the delegation and then going, now what? Yeah. So it gives you a little bit of background. So we're trying to do a little bit better job in kind of pulling that information from the delegate before I actually even schedule them onto an agenda so we know exactly what they want of council. Okay. So I think that's probably part of the question, but I mean, council can always refer items to staff or defer for discussion at a later time.
Yeah, I think that would just be good practice, you know, that we were, because sometimes with the delegations, right before they speak, we're being handed out with upwards of 20 pages of material, and then there's a PowerPoint or a presentation, and then if you're reading, they'll say you're not listening to me. If you don't read the materials, you haven't prepped yourself. So it puts us in an unfair position because I personally can't read and listen at the same time. I can do one or the other, or I can do poorly at both. So I think that's where it's just on us to receive this. I mean, if it's something like, I don't know, I think it's a case by case if there's something of an urgent matter, but then it would be helpful if the delegation provided those materials in advance so that we know that, you know, let's say there's an event coming asking for sponsorship, then email all of council so we have that, so we're not making a decision here and not knowing. So it's a case of course, the advanced information, and then maybe just good practice, refer to staff and get information at the next meeting.
I think the word will get out. Our last 3 requests have gone back and forth on 3 emails before I've actually confirmed them, so they give me the information that I need for the
because there can be nothing on the request at all, and then suddenly there's, well, here's however many pages.
And we're going to look at revising the request form as well.
Okay, so then that'll be fine. Okay. Councillor Beddoes, then St. Pierre.
Yeah, I just want to say that last update I had in advance, I very much appreciated to have that information. It gives us a bit of a heads up. Sure appreciate it. Good.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Yes, I do think that part of it is also the approach that's used. We can have a delegation that's essentially using high-pressure sales tactics, and automatically it sounds like an emergency. It sounds like it's urgent. It may sound like this is the last and final opportunity to move on this thing. Meanwhile, most things just aren't. and I think that there needs to be something done about that. I was thinking about it, and something had come to me, and it related to what you were saying about getting more information. Is it possible in some sort of policy for delegations or further explanations in terms of what we want from them if they actually want to request something? If they want to request something from council, maybe they need to let us know ahead of time with sufficient information. Otherwise, they should know that we just don't accept requests in general on the spot. I mean, just
through your worship, as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to do a better job of kind of pulling that out of the delegate. What is their actual request of council? But as I mentioned before, I actually have a couple of proposed amendments in addition to the ones that are contained in the report. So if there's no more questions, I can proceed with those. Okay. So based on some general feedback, there was a discussion about having a report of the CAO near the top of the agenda order. So on page 14 and 15 of your agenda package, or pages 8 and 9 of the draft bylaw, is the order of business. So if that is something that council would like to see, I would propose it would either go before or after section E, which is the delegations from the police and fire chiefs and the public. I would probably suggest it could go after those. I mean, the CAO is going to be here all night anyway, and I think we're moving the police and fire chief up to the front of the agenda because sometimes they may need to leave for an emergency. So if everybody's okay with that, we could propose that. The next one, I just wanted to make sure that this is a new one that's proposed, is item G as it currently is right in front of you. Make sure that everybody understood what a consent agenda was. If people aren't familiar, it's a piece of the agenda that contains routine, procedural, information, and self-explanatory, non-controversial items typically found in an agenda. They are presented in a single motion for a vote after allowing anyone to speak to any of the items and or request that a specific item be moved to the full agenda for individual attention. And then other items are put on the agenda and handled as usual. I went and just looked at a couple of municipalities that use a consent agenda. I think it depends how we move forward, whether it's going to be time-saving or not, but I wanted to just give you an example of the types of things they put on their consent agenda. Keep in mind, you can always pull them off for a specific attention if you wanted to, but it would be receipt of committee minutes. They put bylaws for like first, second, and third reading. Like one municipality had their tax rate bylaw on there, and then it has you can have public input on that before final reading. First and second reading for zoning bylaws. Again, because typically they'll just get called to a public hearing anyway, but you can talk about them if you want to. Liquor permit applications, requests for resolutions, or what's the word? When we get requests from organizations to pass a specific resolution. I can't remember what the term is.
Proclamation.
Proclamations.
Some of those, like, if I may, a zoning would not fit there for first and second because we've debated and rejected, like, turn them down. It would seem more like adoption would fit under the consent agenda because we've gone through first, second, third, the public hearing and everything, and now it's coming back. Like at the CRD, I see adoption on the consent agenda, but not first and second.
Yeah, I don't think it would be appropriate for final because that's when you kind of always have that on there and you're supposed to give it special consideration. Like you have that break after third and you're supposed to have that pause and reflect upon it for a final reading. I didn't see it in any of the other ones. Okay. We don't have to put this in there if you don't think it's a good idea. I watched a portion of another municipality's meeting today and their consent agenda went 35 minutes. So I don't know that it's a time saver. It was just something that
I think, I think there's a place for it, like the RCMP quarterly reports, committee minutes when we get them. Like these are all things that we receive for information. Okay. We get maybe even correspondence. We'll talk about correspondence later. maybe quote the correspondence. I think, I think let's try it.
Okay.
And if it's not working, then it won't be there.
Okay. Well, while you're talking about the correspondence, so as I noted in the last paragraph of my report, the correspondence has been removed from the order of business, and it's proposed that we would just circulate all correspondence to council, and if council has any interest in a particular item, they could just contact myself and have it put onto the agenda for discussion, rather than having every single piece go on the agenda and end up possibly having discussion.
Okay. Councillor McMath.
What would the deadline for us be, though, to get it back to you?
Well, they go out on the Friday prior, so probably by Wednesday noon, because we produce the agenda on Thursday. So 24 hours before you get the agenda.
So we typically receive the correspondence, because we get it in advance by email on usually on a Friday, though.
Yeah.
So then, I'm just trying to think this through in my head. Then it's already too late for that coming Monday. It would have to be in 2 weeks' time.
No, you could give it. You could request it from me up until the following Wednesday. Oh, sorry. I see. If it's the Friday before the meeting.
Yeah, like if
well,
we get
it's
ours...
not going to be on the agenda anyway. If you're getting on the Friday, because we've already produced the agenda, unless it's an urgent item that has a deadline that can't wait until the next meeting. But if it's requesting something of council, we would put it on the agenda anyway. It's kind of all the other general requests that aren't, like coming from CRD or the province, like, we request X of the District of Sault. We would put those on the agenda anyway. So there will be some correspondence, but a lot of the other stuff that you typically see, we would take off and circulate.
Okay. Councillor St. Pierre, then Bateman.
I don't know if I actually see much of a time savings. I think that at that point, we're all trying. I know that when I go through the agenda, I can actually go through the whole document all in one go. And then I know that there's an opportunity to address any item on correspondence. It actually seems to work for me. I don't know if anybody else likes it that way.
You don't like the current way we're doing it? No. Okay.
That would be my thought, that we're more likely to lose items. I don't think it takes a tremendous amount of time in terms of having it. We can skim through this stuff pretty quick if we want to, if it's all there, and then just make a note of the ones that we are interested in talking about. Comes up during the actual meeting. It doesn't go through you. It doesn't waste your time that way. I don't know. It seems like potentially more work and not necessarily allowing everyone to see it in an equal way. But that's me.
Through your workshop, there would be time savings with preparing the agenda if we did it the new way. There is I would say, not insignificant amount of time dedicated to putting together the correspondence package, and given that it's becoming public, we do need to go through and make sure that it contains no personal information, removing all the emails and phone numbers if people put them in. So there would be definitely a time savings that could be put to better use in the Corporate Services Department.
Okay, Councillor, we have a bit of a speaking line. Councillor Bateman, then Beddoes.
Yeah. So, I hear you about time savings, and I guess consent agenda also is part of this time saving means. I do, in the interest of transparency, I do like a full correspondence package. In my personal experience as a citizen submitting correspondence to the district back on behalf of Transition Sault, I would send in I didn't see them in the correspondence packages, so I've always been a bit mystified about the process. So, what staff deemed to be of interest, we as council would get the chance to ensure that particular pieces of information go into the package. I still think that I think the public, in the interest of transparency, need to see the full correspondence that we're receiving. You might not want to include the full reports on, sexual trafficking, which was a big, or EV stations, which was like 150 pages. So just that's what I have to say on the correspondence subject. Transparency, I think the public needs to see these documents.
Councillor Beddoes?
Well, I kind of like the new suggestion. There is some stuff that comes through which is, to me, just routine. And any other organization that I work through, our secretary or the staff would go through, and you would have access to everything, like was proposed. We still have access to it. But just those things that require a decision by us, or possible, I'd welcome a little shorter on the evening. And I get it on the Wednesday. I could read through if there's something there that I really want to see, like maybe the charging stations for 46 pages. Then it's up to me to bring it forward. And no one's refusing to do it. It's just that saves a lot of time, because a lot of that stuff is just routine, and sometimes it should just be filed. But that's my 2 bits on it.
I think, Councillor McMahon?
Is there's staff efficiency, but then there's also council meeting efficiency. And so I don't know if, I definitely hear what you're saying with just people write a letter, they want to know that it's being acknowledged. So maybe staff will still not have that time if they put it in there. But I do love the idea of council having to email you their action items beforehand, so that there isn't sort of that like, I'm thinking like all that humming and hawing that happens in the meeting at like 11 o'clock at night. That I would love to see trimmed, because it's not that you're rushing to do things, it's that you're just being efficient, and that you have your action, you know what you're doing, and you're going to bring it to the table. I'm totally okay with having, it could be a 300-pager just for the essence of transparency or being seen and being heard. That's totally valid. But for our part, I think then that should be something that we do. So I don't know if there's a hybrid of your suggestion.
I think the court, because part of it too, and this may speak to why your mystification, if I don't know if that's a word.
That is a word.
Because when people email info, then someone on staff receives it and then builds it into that correspondence file that then comes to us once a week, right? And then that rolls onto the agenda. But if someone were to email individual councillors, unless the councillor forwards it to info, then staff don't even know that we've received it.
And that's what I did. I used to send them to councillors.
Yeah, and then sometimes I would get it and forward it, and then sometimes I don't, not because I don't want to, I just forget to, because you get so many emails in, and then it's like, so that's where I think we have to do a bit more work on the correspondence somehow, in terms of some, because I agree, like we get some and they're 20, 30 pages long, and this is long sort of, yeah, or like annual reports, that can be hundreds of pages, and then some come in the mail that then don't come on here, but the ones that are electronic do. Like, it's sort of a weird mash of both, someone drops off a card to me, unless I remember to give this to staff, then it doesn't show up here at all. But if it's going to staff, then it gets scanned and ends up. Like, it's coming in 2 different ways with this different technology. And then some stuff comes marked private, but then it involves a council decision, so then it can't be private anymore. It has to be redacted, and then that's up to the letter writer. If you want me to act on something in council to pass a resolution, then we have to determine whether or not it fits in closed or open. And then some people will say, I don't want it to be discussed publicly. Well, then I'm not going to do anything with it at all, because I can't. So it's kind of a weird, it's just how correspondence comes to us. It's in different shapes. But I see the point. I think it's just, it's about efficiency. And then sometimes I thought, okay, we receive the correspondence block, and then if councillors are wanting to act on something, is that a notice of motion to the next meeting then? And we discuss them. But then now it's spanning, I don't know.
It doesn't have to be the notice of motion. As I mentioned, the items that typically go in an agenda package get sent to council by email on the Friday prior.
Right.
So you would essentially have all weekend, Monday, Tuesday, to review that. Let me know on Wednesday if you want it in the agenda package.
Right, for the following week.
So you've got pretty much 5 days, 4 to 5 days to review that mail package to let me know that you want something on the agenda.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm thinking that one of my concerns was, okay, you missed your timeline for whatever reason, but that doesn't actually follow. You can actually bring up, something could be an archived piece of mail. It can still be brought forward for a future meeting. So that's not really much of an issue. And that does allay my concerns somewhat, which were not real ones, I guess, at that level. The other thing that I think Councillor Bateman brought up was actually the acknowledgement. And I think we're looking at a communication strategy to be clear with the public what's happening. So this sounds like it might be a part of a communication strategy. What do we do with the receipt of correspondence? What goes back out when we receive that correspondence? I mean, are they let know? Well, it's going to be passed on to the council. It has been passed on to the council. They'll decide at this point if they want to include it in the meeting. It's up to them. And I don't know if that's already happening.
Through your worship, so the system that I'm proposing, I did use in a past municipality, and that was something that we did. Your correspondence is passed on to council, and then if council, whatever the terminology is, feels that, it requires further discussion, they'll bring it forward on an agenda package, and then it's left at that.
So through your worship, they know that it's been received, they know it's been considered. That's decent. The other thing is, I was thinking about this, if we actually move forward on this right now and take the staff's recommendation to try and streamline the system, it's not written in stone. We can always change this in the future if we find that it's not working for us.
Yeah, I think, we can always, right now, it probably could do that because it could probably go under the consent agenda if we bring the correspondence back and then just deal with it that way.
Mr. Schaefer?
In your worship, in my experience, each council I've worked for has had a different desire for their, in a way to receive their correspondence, and there doesn't seem to be a perfect solution that's a one-size-fits-all. So if there's a feeling on council that the current system doesn't work, then trying a new system is a good idea, and see if that one works, because there are any number of different solutions and any number of different desires from council to deal with correspondence. It's not an easy issue.
No, it makes sense just to try something different and just to reevaluate it and see how that goes, I think. And then I think it's also, should council receive correspondence either in the mail, the physical mail, or email, then forward it to the corporate officer if you want it to be on the agenda. And then at a previous meeting, we also discussed that, because then it's like, who do we send it to? Because then it's like, who's there? Who, and it was just corp@sup.ca, I understand, would be the email to send it to. Is that correct? Because we don't know who's on vacation or flexing at all. So if we send it to one person, we don't know that, and then we get an out of office, and then how many times do you send an email? That doesn't become, we want to send it once and not have to decide who to send it to. It just needs to be a straightforward email. Or do we send it to info? I need to know where to forward it to.
Yeah, we can work through the actual process outside of this meeting, but I think info would probably be the most direct one, because that's where all of our mail goes, and that's the person who puts together the mail package that you get on Friday. But they can also then forward it to the appropriate person in corporate services if it's to be put on the agenda, but we can figure that out at a later date if this is the way council wants to try this.
Okay, that's important for us. We need to know to be able to send it one way and not have to figure out who to send it to, because then it'll get lost for sure. The other thing, since we're on it, in terms of the order of business, where are we here on item 21, is I feel that after the call to order, there should be a First Nation recognition put into the bylaw. And then we can work with the SAUC at a later date I've kind of made something up, but I would like to actually have a conversation with them around the language and knowing that there's, you know, some flexibility if people want to add stuff. But there has been, through different conferences that we've already attended, there's a difference to say traditional territory versus territory. So you may have noticed I'm now saying territory instead of traditional territory, because that's what I've learned from another First Nation chief. So it's just once we have that conversation with the SUP specifically on what that acknowledgement should look like, but I think it should be included automatically in the order of
Certainly
business.
do that.
Okay. Right after the call to order, because that's calling everyone's attention, so that would be the appropriate time. Councillor St. Pierre.
I was wondering about what you've been doing with, sorry, Your Worship, I was wondering about your report to the public, your verbal report that you've been doing at the outset, and whether or not we want to move that officially to the front, along with any other.
So there's two parts to that. So what I've started doing at the start is just sort of highlights between the last regular meeting and the current regular meeting, or just some topical highlights. And then later on, during our council update, we get into more things. It's just, this is when everybody is here in a regular meeting. So it's like chair's remarks, really, would be at the start, CAO remarks, and then in terms of other updates, then I'll just fall those into the council. But does that need to be there, or does the chair just have that privilege?
Your Worship, no, I don't think that it does. I mean, it's really the chair's meeting, and you can do what you want. Kind of one of the goals was to try and, our order of business list was really, really long, so we're trying to shorten it up, and I really don't think that it's necessary to say that. I mean, it is your meeting, and I think that, you know, after you do the First Nations recognition, to say a few words is not inappropriate.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you
we
for
can
that.
certainly add that one in. And I had one more item, if there's no more questions on the order of business item.
Okay. Anything on the other stuff for now? Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bateman. Sorry.
Why don't you finish up?
Okay. On page 20 of your agenda package, or page 14 of the proposed bylaw, under public speakers and delegations, which is items 12 through 15, I would propose. Got to thinking about why, when we get delegation requests that maybe aren't necessarily appropriate, because I think it's sometimes people trying to get in front of council, as Councillor St. Pierre mentioned earlier, when they are going to be given otherwise another opportunity to do that. So I think what Jen has up on the screen here is adding an addition 16 that would say that delegations are not permitted for subject matters which will be provided their own opportunity for public input, and that would be like grant applications or bylaws that are going to have public input, like business bylaws and things like that, because sometimes, you know, they come 3 weeks before the public meeting for grant decisions, and, you know, I'm getting council, and right now I don't have a way to refuse them because it is within the purview of council. But is it really fair for those people to get out in front of council early and, you know, get in your ear and get that jump on everybody else? And I, you know, sometimes think that that's not necessarily fair. They're going to be given an opportunity at a later date anyway. So if that's amenable to council, we can certainly add that one in as well. That's all I have, Your Worship. Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Okay, so just backtracking a little bit here. The agenda packages at 4 p.m. on Thursdays is fine. I'm just wondering, that's the complete package. Is there any way you can give us a heads up earlier in the week? Or, because I'm sure right now you have partial agendas built up for the next 6 weeks, very likely. And hence, I just find that having that little extra time to whirl it around is really useful. Such as with Ms. Campbell's report to us.
Certainly. I mean, I could say that we could. However, those agendas typically will change right up until Thursday morning. So I could give you something and you'll be excited to see it, and then we have to pull it last minute. And I just, you know, we know that there's going to be public hearings, but, you know, just depending, because we have those tight turnaround times, we've only got, you know, like staff are supposed to have their reports into their managers on the Monday. So then, then their manager goes through for approval, and then it has to come through myself. It has to go through our CAO. And by the time we get through all that and determine whether or not this is ready to actually go on the agenda, sometimes it gets pulled right at the last minute because we need more information, or it needs this, it needs that. So I would really be hesitant to provide you with something earlier.
Okay, fair game.
Just in response to that, like when committees and the like are formed, though, then that would allow for that earlier discussion on something, in a sense, right? Just like a committee of the whole is designed to discuss items like this, and we have time to think about it, and then it's a couple of weeks before it hits in a regular meeting. A public hearing, you also have the advantage of time, because yes, the first and second reading would come to us, say, late Thursday, Friday. You passed first and second, then it goes out because there's that time for it to be advertised, and you have those materials, so it allows for further processing and review and all those things. But just thinking, when committees are formed then they would be hashing out some things, and then before we'll get their minutes, right? And then they would make a recommendation to council. So there is a bit of time, in a sense, depending on what it is, perhaps.
Sorry, can I just clarify? I want to make sure I'm on the same page when you're talking about committees. This is like the advisory committees that we were speaking about. So yeah, their agendas. There's no reason that we can't circulate the committee agendas to all members of council, and then you can at least see what they're going to discuss. And it's going to depend how tight the turnaround is for the admin support to be able to get those minutes produced, and whether there is an actual recommendation. But you'll at least know that a committee is discussing the issue.
It's more, I think, it's more the agenda for the committees when they're meeting is that council all gets them, because there'll be some councillors that are appointed to it. Others that are not may be like, I want to attend that one, or sit in on that one, or give this feedback. So knowing that item, I think that's important, is that we all receive that agenda in advance and can then decide if we feel we want to attend and speak as a member of the public or a member of council at that particular meeting. I think that's important. And then you'll see what's going on there. It would allow, if you're not on that committee, then would allow, you could hear, that discussion, and then it allows some time, and that committee may or may not make a motion to have it go to council yet or not, depending on the subject matter. So that might help provide a bit more time on some things, perhaps.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
A couple more?
Yeah, of course.
So I surrender that one. What about a deadline for supplemental agenda items, Friday at 4:30? Because what I find is Monday afternoon, as we've discussed already, these whopping great documents.
That's too tight. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Bateman. What page number are you on?
Well, I don't know.
Oh.
I'm just thinking in terms of personal experience here, and improving the procedures of this council would be to somehow get a wrap on people who feel they can drop major documents on us and expect us to be ready and able to reply to them within a matter of hours.
Oh, I see. So I was
supplemental agenda.
Supplemental. So the items that come in, and it's the Monday at 4:00 being because
we're noon here. Monday at noon is our deadline for supplemental.
Okay. That's
so.
But public hearing can be received all the way through, including all the way through to the end.
No, I think that's noon in the public hearing notice. Monday at noon is the deadline for submissions for public hearings that same day. So I think we would run into a bit of a challenge if we were to cut off public input 3 days prior.
Okay.
And then we also just, because the fact that we are a organization that offers flex time, those happen on Fridays, and again, would hate to have something slip through the cracks, but I think it's more a legality issue of when we cut off that supplemental date or time.
So all supplemental, including public hearing, is Monday at noon.
That's correct.
Okay, and that's been the case for some time.
Yes.
Okay, but then when the public hearing opens, though, that allows for people who have missed the Monday at noon cutoff to present written materials.
Yes, that's correct. It's written,
Okay.
written input for the public hearing that's cut off at noon so that we can get it to council.
Okay, but during the public hearing, though, they can also present written materials.
Yes, they can.
Okay, so that's where public hearing differs from just public
Right.
input on an agenda. Got it. Okay, so that's the secondary piece. Okay. Other,
Well, Tony, Councillor at St. Pierre, do you want to talk to that?
I'm the chair, so
I know
you
you
keep
are.
talking.
Okay, then I'll finish up.
Yes.
In my naive way here, we did initially. I first of all want to thank Ms. Rear for putting together this new document on. Oh, both of you. Oh, this was you. Okay. Well, thank you. Ah, well, okay. And I'm just curious, initially there were 3 delegations in the first draft of this, the 3 delegation maximum. Now, I don't recall whether we had a robust debate around dropping it to 2. It seems to guarantee 15 minutes for the public to come and speak to us through delegations would seem reasonable.
So I'll just challenge that a little bit. Okay. 15 minutes does seem very reasonable, but they tend to be an hour and a half. By the time I think, for me, it's a case of there's the delegation for 5 minutes, and I try to be very firm on that. If they go on, council can pass a resolution for another 5 minutes, which is fine. So it goes up to 10 minutes. Then council begins to ask questions, and then it can go on. And then I try to sort of wrap up some of the questions a bit because of the timeliness. And then we get into our second and our third. So meanwhile, you have people that have prepared months, and it's just a bit of a fairness aspect, that have been waiting months to have their items heard. And they're all moving down later and later into the agenda, and they had had everything submitted well in advance. Then it's staff putting together the report. You've heard about the timeliness to get that onto the agenda. Meanwhile, someone has decided, I'm going to bring this to council now, and it's like they're jumping the queue, and everyone else who's been waiting months is just waiting longer. And then sometimes we see people drift out, and then when their item actually comes to the attention, there's nobody here. Well, they can't wait until 10 o'clock at night in some cases. And so, that's the only piece, is never have we gotten through 3 delegations in 15 minutes. So, that's where I might have been the one that said that 2 would be a good number. And then if we have 2, and it's like, okay, this meeting is full, you're going to the next one, but that doesn't stop someone from then emailing council and saying, I have this, it's going to info, and then you would receive it right away, and then we're not hitting it and asking tons of questions on the spot because we've received nothing in advance. And now we're asking questions because this is the first time we're hearing anything. So it's a prepared, and then we have resolutions, we have no preparedness, no background, the public can't comment. It just seems unfair for those that have been waiting a long time.
Through your worship, I just wanted to point out you also still have the public question and comment period, which is also an opportunity for public input, and that's up to 10 additional minutes. So essentially you've got 20 minutes for public input there. So, if you wanted to change that, but I think that's going to be challenging, you could provide for another delegation, but reduce the public input time if you want.
I wouldn't do that because then I don't think that's fair to people that are commenting on the agenda, and I tend not as chair to cut it off at 10 minutes. People are just allowed, and then we get into that. So it's just, if there's a public hearing, then everything else pushes. So I just look at people that have been waiting for their items to be heard, and then they're here forever, it seems. Council is.
Oh, thank you for those explanations, and I need to ask the questions. And I do hope that we can communicate, if anyone's listening at home or are members of the press, please be clear with the public about these opportunities, info@sup.ca, and the very reasoned rationales you just gave for 2 delegations. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you. I was thinking that in terms of the supplemental agenda, wanted to comment on the supplemental agenda. I'd like to know whether or not the people who sent it in realize that 12 o'clock, council may not read it. It just may not happen. I think it would be awfully nice if people knew right off the bat that if they send stuff in at 12 o'clock on the Monday, people are not necessarily married to their email or to their computer, and it may not be read, and that's their problem. I think that I would be just fine with that sort of communication strategy. And then
That's our good answer.
And if they want to send it in at that point in time and are prepared to take the risk of my not looking at it, I'm okay with that too. But I'd like them to know that there's a risk, and I will try to look at it, but I don't guarantee it. And I would like that to be known. In terms of delegations, I think 2 is probably reasonable, especially if we actually permit them during the committee of the whole. And I don't know if that's actually been discussed, because that would offer additional opportunities within a short time frame.
Like to also have them at committee of the wholes?
Yeah.
Sometimes it depends. Like we have, at some point we'll be having the CRD, an example, someone from the CRD come out to present to council about the CRD. 5 minutes is going to be too tight for that, so it would be the case that they would be better presenting at a committee of the whole for, say, 10 minutes, given that we're asking questions about the CRD, or even like the school district when they do an update on their facilities. We tend to move them. The Land Commission, were they at a council or committee of the whole? The LC, I'm thinking. Yeah, so that is another possibility.
If I may, Your Worship. So when council invites somebody to come and attend, and we know that it's one of our larger community partners, that there'd be a lot of back and forth, we will try to schedule them to a committee of the whole if we have them. I would say again, if we invite them or we get a request from CRD or somebody like that, if I already had 2 delegations on, we would probably make, I think I have that ability as the corporate officer to make that exception to still add them onto the agenda rather than turning them away. Mm-hmm. We still, if it's business, or it might be something that has a really tight deadline on it or something like that, that we would still allow them to come.
Okay. All right. Anything else? And then for speaking time, did I see that was for councillors, that it's been reduced from 10 minutes to 5 minutes?
Good to know.
Did I see that?
I believe it always has been 5 minutes for regular council meetings, and it's 10 minutes for committee of the whole.
Is it really? I thought it was 10 minutes for councillors. Oh.
I'm sorry. From day one, I understood that it was 5 minutes.
You are correct, Councillor Meadows.
Okay, so that was a mistake in my memory then. That yeah, and I can find a way to time as needed. It hasn't really been. No. I don't light up the timer, but we could. We could. So that's the same as 5 minutes then. And so typically, it's the case where councillors are allowed to speak twice. But this is where it's for a 5 minute maximum. So if you speak for 4.5 minutes the first round, then technically you only get 30 seconds the second time. On any particular item. So committee of the whole, like there's 10 minutes. So it's the intent of committee of the whole. There's more discussion like we're having now. But when it comes to council, it's the case of everyone typically would be allowed to speak twice only. And if you speak only for 20 seconds each time, that doesn't give you 3, 4, 5 to speak for 30 seconds, right? Each time it would be 2 minutes, two times for a 5 minute maximum total. So that's where it's up to each person to sort of think about making your point succinctly, because then I could actually rule and cut you off. Right? That's correct, right? 5 minute maximum 2 times. So you could choose 3 minutes, then 2 minutes, 4 and 1. And that's myself included. So, well, I know. Okay. Anything else? We're all good? Okay. Well, I think it's good to give it a go. So we have a recommendation here, and that is that council receive this report for discussion purposes.
I think we could also add to that and direct staff to bring the bylaw as amended forward for first reading at the next meeting, first and second.
Okay, so that's been moved by Councillor Beddoes. Anything further at this point? You'll still have time to reflect and think about it and obtain feedback and all those good things. One thing I would add, though, and I don't know where this would be appropriate to add, I'd be curious to start receiving the stats, if we can, on the webcasting.
I don't know that we can get that. I think I've heard before that we can't get accurate information, but I will try my best.
You know, I'm just curious, like, how many meetings, like, do a lot of people sign in and then sort of taper off? Do they come in later on? How many people actually view the webcast? Is there more during a public hearing? I don't know. It would just be interesting to see what data can we get on it. Is it hundreds? Are people not here because really there's hundreds of people at home watching the webcast? Like, every municipality is investing in this technology, but I'm just curious to know, like, do people actually sit at home and tune in and watch a council meeting?
And do they stay awake?
Exactly. And for how long? Are they engaged, or do they come in and out? Is it staff later maybe going back to look at, okay, what did council actually decide, and what was that resolution, so I know which action to take, or what do we need to look at for the minutes? Are we trying to is it more being used in that way? You know, it's an opportunity. I'm just curious. I just want to know. I'm just curious. Doesn't mean, you know, it's good technology. I'm just curious is all. Mr. Schaefer?
I think council might be surprised at how many people do tune in, at least for portions of the meetings. I know in the past, both in Victoria and in Prince George, where I spent most of my career, we had people come from home during a public hearing because they were watching it and couldn't contain themselves and had to come down and contribute to the presentations to council, and that happened more than once in each place. So people do watch. It might just be the hardcore council watchers, but people do actually watch.
No, and I know that. I certainly have heard that they have. I'm just curious to know if that's what that might look like. Okay, so I'll call the question then. Or do you have something else, Councillor St. Pierre? Okay, we are on a motion now. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure what that means. I'll go on with this. One further question through your worship to staff is, I've noticed that the agendas have gotten much shorter since the first few whoppers. They were around 300-400 pages or so. That's wonderful. I truly appreciate that. I do think, however, that it would be nice to have in terms of, I don't know if we can do something in terms of policy to actually keep things reasonable. No, Carolyn's saying just no, don't even try it. All right, I'm done.
I think it depends on the business of the day. Really, it's on what's flowing.
Worth a shot.
Yeah. Okay. Call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Great. Thank you very much for your work on this, Ms. Machada. Okay. Our next part are some outstanding resolutions, and I just have a technical request here. Is that when this came into the iCompass, like into our app, it comes in scanned sideways like this, and this iPad, I cannot get the screen, I can't get it to rotate because of the way the app is. So you're sitting here reading it, like you can't, and it keeps turning, and the app that's in it, like, were you able to figure, like, I could not.
If you put your screen on lock.
I can't figure out how to lock this. I've looked at everything. I've gave up. Okay, because but then even if you lock it, like, anyway.
if you recall when the agenda was being produced, there was a problem with the printing, and I think that probably has something to do with the way it ended up in iCompass, but we will work diligently to make sure that doesn't happen
Just if
again.
they come the same way and then you're not. Okay. Just to remember. Okay. So we've received this before, and then we've asked for it again. So, and then we have it here to actually address it. So did you want to just walk us through the ones that you flagged for us to rescind?
Certainly, Your Worship. On page 62 of 72 on your agenda, the first one that I was recommending be removed was Resolution 2018-351. And that resolution requests the preparation of a report on the requirements for a waste management bylaw. Because we're anticipating a motion from council to come up at the May 13th meeting, it seems that this motion, which when I looked at it wasn't terribly clear, there are a number of different facets that you could consider in preparation of a waste management bylaw. It might be better just simply to remove this one and then await the direction from council at the next meeting.
Okay, so on the screen it says 35, but it should be 351?
Okay, I have 351 on my...
I have 351 on the sheet, but that would be, is that a typo that's on the screen? Okay. My recollection of this discussion was that because of the amount of bears that are being attracted to garbage being put out days in advance of pickup, there was some conversation that that garbage be placed out the morning of the day of scheduled pickup to start to discourage just for the sake of the wildlife. That was my memory of this. So will that element be captured when this comes forward?
And Your Worship, I guess that depends on what the motion looks like, as is, I believe, a notice of motion coming forward from the last meeting to May 13th.
Okay, so we can, when we have that discussion, then we can discuss that then.
Okay.
Okay. Next one? Or sorry, Councillor Bateman?
I just had a quick question. Is it a provincial mandate that municipalities have a waste management bylaw?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Fair game.
So the next resolution noted there is on page 64 of 72, and that is motion or resolution number 2018-287, which is staff that request staff take part in meetings regarding improvements to SUPPLEMENTARY ball diamonds. That meeting didn't take place, and I think that if council wishes to group those particular groups together, and in the resolution it notes the Sioux Community Association, CPARC, and members of district staff to explore opportunities for improvement to the Sioux ball diamonds. If that resolution is still in play, there's a possibility to do that, I guess, in terms of whether or not it's already been dealt with. I think this resolution might be moot.
Sorry, Councillor McMath.
Yeah, I would say it's moot. So I met with CPARC, the Community Association, and the softball committee, and the field repairs and all that stuff is done for this year. So yeah, it's definitely moot. It'll be revisited next year, but we can look at it then.
And then in our later discussion, we are talking about a liaison to some of those organizations anyway. So yeah, I would agree. This can go. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Resolution 2017-89, I guess, and that is on page 66 of 72, is the issue of the dog park. And it was noted as being on hold. And the recommendation was to either confirm that that is still a desire of council, or to, and if that's the case, prioritize it below some other items that seem to be of more urgent import, or to remove it from the list.
Okay, no, I think it's, in my view, it's still important, and I think that in some of our parks, it's because we need to look at perhaps an on-leash situation in some of our parks. And where do the dogs go off-leash? You know, I think that's still an item that we need to look at. There is a need for a dog park in Souk. So I don't want to see it go, because to me that means we're getting rid of that possibility, and I think we do need a dog park. Dogs. There's a lot of dogs in Souk. Councillor McMath and then Bateman?
Yeah, I would keep it on the list so we don't forget it, but I would put it at the lower in the priority list with the other things that staff are working on.
Okay. Councillor Bateman?
Is this the sort of, through you,
yes,
Your Worship, is this the sort of thing that would come up in the Parks and Trails Master Plan?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so,
Good
right? Like that would be the intent of a Parks and Trails Master Plan, is to have that conversation. So it may be the case, and even we've talked about a particular plan for whiff and spit. If it's not properly captured in the Parks and Trails Master Plan, then we need to have to look at that. Okay. So we'll leave it for now. Councillor St. Pierre?
Through Your Worship, just curious what is meant by reprioritizing below other items, what that might look like. Just not clear on that.
Your Worship, after the strategic plan is complete, staff will be looking at the directions that Council has provided in its goals and objectives. We'll be formulating work plans for the rest of the year, and those and your strategic planning will provide us with some direction for subsequent years as to which items are most important and which ones need to be dealt with on a lower priority. Everything can't be the first priority. Obviously, people have their particular agendas from members of staff, members of council, members of the public. But work planning, I think, saying completion of the Parks and Trails Master Plan will include these various items, and as a part of that, we will need to discuss which ones need to come first, which ones are budgeted for. And I seem to be rambling. I'm sorry, but
no, that's fine. You know, okay. And I don't know if we've ever made any contact about used fencing.
I don't.
If we have, I have no idea where it is. Councillor St. Pierre?
Just in terms of process, we've got this resolution in front of us that seems to move vaguely towards a dog park. Do we just need a more robust resolution from council that says, let's create a dog park and look for alternatives from staff? Or I'm not sure. And is this, again, something that waits under our strategic plan under beautification and parks, which there is an element of that could go in under there, or under the transportation master plan? What's the format for not losing this and actually moving on it and getting it over with and done?
It was always the case back in the day about, we had the call at the time that we needed a bike park, a dog park, and a horseshoe park. And then there was an order of sequence where different things happened. So the horseshoes happened, the bike park happened at Sea Park, and the dogs have been left without a place. And then it keeps popping up all the time.
So in terms of what's the process now? Yeah,
what would be a good recommendation there?
Your Worship, if Council seems to desire that this stays on the list in some form or another, to be wrapped into if the Parks and Trails Master Plan includes some reference to it, then the presence of this resolution on the outstanding resolutions list will make sure that it comes forward at that point.
Okay.
And it'll get dealt with.
Okay. Sounds good. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I think it's best to have it in there because there might be an opportunity that comes up. Keep it a low priority. We can always move it up in priority if a situation arises that we get some land or whatever, and but it should be there to bring forward.
Yeah, and I think it'll come back again as we receive the Parks and Trails Master Plan and start looking at those recommendations and how to move forward on some of them. Okay. Next, please.
Next is Resolution 217-541, which is on page 67 of 72. Changes to the federal gas tax at this point. This motion was made 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago at least, and the federal and provincial gas tax funding process has changed since then, and I think this is a matter of something that we would have to deal with and apply for, keep an eye on as we go. So this resolution for a particular report on this, I think it's simply out of date.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. In consultation, Your Worship, with Ms. Campbell, we have determined that Section 27, or Resolution rather, Section 2017-463 has been completed.
Okay,
So
what page was that one on?
That will be on page 68. So that's complete.
Oh, for the one on Churchill Drive there?
Yes.
Okay.
Also on page 68 is Resolution 2017-452. It's on hold. I believe that the recent changes to the building permitting process render this item moot as well.
Yep. Sounds good. Excellent work on that, by the way. I'm pretty certain I'm talking about sections of the Local Government Act, and that's clearly not what we're talking about. Resolution 2017-369, which is a proposed zoning amendment to prohibit ocean-based salmon farming, I believe has been superseded by changes to provincial regulations. So okay.
We moved as well. On page 69 of 72, you'll have Resolution 217-366, and that particular issue has been the issues that prompted the requirement for the covenant have been remedied in different fashion, and the parking issues have therefore been resolved.
Okay.
Resolution 2017-167, which is on page 70 of 72. Soup Pocket News is now utilized for specific types of advertising until such time as the province considers an amendment to the Local Government Act's requirements for advertising for doing statutory advertising. I think the fact that we're utilizing that particular outlet is probably moot at this point. Section 2017-152, which is also on page 70. This appears to simply be out of date. I don't know that Council has any interest in directing staff to further pursue this. If so, it would be good for us to get a reaffirmation.
I think this is more an agreement that the RCMP has with Victim Services and the Transition House. So
that could be.
I don't.
Mm-hmm.
To me, or it was a funding request at that time, so it's kind of dated now.
70.
I would just look that if there was a funding request, we would deal with it in current terms. This is 2 years old. Yeah. Councillor St. Pierre?
I was curious about this particular funding request with reference to others, for example, from the Sook Shelter Society, from other pseudo-emergency, pseudo-health-related organizations. We're concerned about downloading from the province and where to get the funds for these things. But I was also worried about, or thinking that when we were doing the grants was not the right place for a lot of this stuff, because they were looking for long-term funding and wondering about community agreements. Don't know if we've got it on our agenda or on our list of things to do to look at our community agreements and actually try and take some of the stuff out from the grants and either deal with it by negotiating with the province. I don't know how we do that. Or setting up some line items under community agreements and just making it done. But this looks like the same sort of thing coming up again and again.
Well, this is also 2 years old. So, you know, they haven't come back this year for community grants. So in some cases, and I don't remember all of our line items, so we have some community service agreements in place with some organizations. Some have allocated line items like the food bank, for example, annually set amounts. And then we have the grants that fall under that particular application process. So they're sort of different. And this one I don't quite recall, except that we probably provide something, and maybe a councillor was asking for more detail as to what we were funding and why. You know, but it's 2 years old, so they've obviously, if they didn't get the funding, they've continued on without us. Councillor Bateman?
Well, just to help you recall, Your Worship, I did look this up this afternoon, because I realize it's quite a thing to rescind one of these motions made by a previous council. But this one related to a submission by SUPP Transition House Society, noting that quote-unquote, police-based victim services programs are cost-shared 50-50 between the Ministry of Public Safety and local governments in communities with a population of 5,000 or more, and where they exist in communities with police strength of 4 officers or more. At a minimum, the Ministry expects local governments to match the Ministry's contribution. This cost-sharing approach recognizes the critical role that police-based victim services play in the police response to crime and trauma, particularly in the area of crisis response. So, back in 2016, the Ministry of Public Safety was donating $43,000, and the District of Sault was not donating their fair share. So, I guess a report, and you know, knowing, I don't know the people at Transition House. However, that's an ongoing, understaffed scenario. So maybe they haven't had the opportunity to come back to us. So I'm concerned that we let that one go.
So I think maybe some follow-up there is.
Yeah.
It would be good to get some follow-up there on that.
And Your Worship, it would.
Councillor McMath?
What exactly are you looking for? I don't understand.
Well, I'm looking for us to follow up on a resolution made 2 years ago, and which deals with a very important part of our social safety net.
So would it not make a little bit more sense to have them put a report together themselves and then come forward to us, and then sort of do that base work, that foundation work, and then staff to review it and come forward to us with their own work?
So that might be a staff strategy. They would like to reach out to Transition House and find out where things stand at the moment and take it from there. Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, rather than our staff building a comprehensive report on a service we don't provide, it would be more, I think, just getting update. Right? We don't provide the service, you know, so to develop a report on a service we don't provide is a bit of a challenge.
I agree.
So, you know, if the motion still lives, I think what our intent would be is just for staff to reach out and to understand, like, just ask them what's happening, get some information, or even to touch base with our base commander. Perhaps he might have that information as well.
Certainly, Your Worship, and I think that might be the first step.
Yeah.
To go down the road is to contact Staff Sergeant MacArthur and see where that's at.
Because if we have an obligation to provide funding and we're not meeting that, and that's something that's coming from the province, then we need to pull up our socks a bit on that. You know. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bateman, for your research on that. 2017-130, Mr. Schaefer.
That's correct, Your Worship. That particular issue, I think, is likely to come. The resolution of that issue is likely to come from the OCP and zoning bylaws that we're looking at right now. And again, due to the passing of time, it might or might not be an issue that needs to be dealt with in a priority that would have us jump the queue on that before we deal with the OCP and the zoning bylaws. So some of the issues around secondary kitchens and things like that, I believe, are regulated through provincial standards as well. So if there's a zoning issue, then we should be addressing that at least in discussions with the OCP.
Yeah, that would make sense because we have a few things like that, but the OCP and the zoning would make the most sense to tackle them. Okay, and the unnumbered item at line 721. Unnumbered line 721.
721, and that is
there we go.
5-year financial plan bylaw. Expenses related to both the boat launch and downtown parking leases and potential cost recovery through installation of parking meters. These issues have been dealt with step by step, and whether they're completely resolved or not is debatable, I guess, but we've certainly taken some steps to deal with most of these issues, and I believe it's simply a matter of handling parking and boat launch issues as they arise.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, thank you very much for that. Comments from councillors on other outstanding resolutions? Councillor Speddles? No? No? St. Pierre?
I was looking at the numbering just kills me. It was 62, which over here is cripes.
Page 62?
It's in the first column. It says 62.
Right, so that would be 2019-4 on page 45.
45. Thank you. I was just about there.
Oh, I see. 62. Okay.
No, actually, that was the wrong one. I'm so sorry. It was referring to the going to a 2-lane to a 3-lane in terms of our roadside allowances in terms of providing parking.
Is that 61? The one just
It could be.
and parking for one side of the roadway in residential neighborhoods implement a 3-lane standard width on all roads?
That's it. I know that it's in progress.
Okay.
But that's a very... I didn't realize that it actually passed in council. I thought there was some sort of a report that it might go into the transportation master plan or some further discussion. But it looks to me like this is actually moving. This is on page 45, first item. So it says here that council amend the main motion to add the following: parking restrictions for one side of the roadway, which is fine, in residential neighborhoods, implement a 3-lane standard width on all roads in all new developments to ensure ample parking. It's a lot of extra costs, a lot of extra road. I didn't realize that we'd actually gone ahead with let's do this thing. I thought there was more of an exploration happening there. Maybe I was just... Yes, sir. Sorry.
Mr. Howitt?
Thank you, Your Worship. In speaking with staff, it is going to be part of the Transportation Master Plan, and it will come forward to Council to deliberate on. And if it gains traction from Council, it can certainly be considered and be put in Bylaw 404, which is our subdivision servicing bylaw, as a requirement. But as stated, it is an added cost and a significant footprint or step on our carbon footprint if you're going to go that route for residential subdivisions. And we're hoping through the TMP and some staffing issues that we can look at alternatives for parking rather than a 3-lane cross section. But we'll be coming back to Council with that.
Okay.
So based on what Mr. Howard is saying, I'm thinking that this is something that I would like removed, or at least in part. I don't... The restrictions on one side of the road, I see that as just fine, but the rest of it should wait for the Transportation Master Plan, OCP, and so on and so forth. I don't actually see this as fitting into our direction.
Okay, so then are you making that as a motion?
Yes.
Okay, so Councillor St. Pierre is making a motion then to remove this, to rescind this motion. Councillor McMath?
Through Your Worship, to staff, have you already started work on this report?
Through Your Worship, excuse me? What?
Have you already started work on this motion or this?
No, it's part of the terms of reference in the Transportation Master Plan.
So it's already coming forward regardless for us to discuss
Yeah,
at this point?
Yeah, and I'm not too sure I'm not intimately involved, but I'm not too sure at what level it will be coming forward, but it'll be coming forward for your consideration.
Okay, well, rather than rescind it right now, I would just like to see what it looks like, because it is an alternative, and then discuss it at that point. So I wouldn't rescind it right now, especially because we just recently moved to have that in there in the first place.
If I understand correctly, what's going to happen is that this is going to be dealt with in the Transportation Master Plan or other options, regardless, which means that down the line, this is just going to be something we'll have to remove from the resolution list because it'll have been dealt with elsewhere and it'll be moot.
Okay. Is it in the plan because it's in this list, or was it always there before it got brought forward?
Through your worship, I believe it was considered as in discussion when the Transportation Master Plan was embarked. It was a fallout of the Development Committee, which I was not a part of, but I believe that that's where it fell through from.
Because I know we chatted about it previously. Brenda brought it forward, and parking is a big issue. And so kind of like the dog park, like perhaps it's low priority on this list of things, but still to keep it there so that it's at least it's one thing that we've checked off and say that we have done. We haven't dropped it off. We've discussed it. We might loathe it. We might not go forward with it, but it's still, it's not, oh, we'll talk about it later kind of thing.
Because technically, so let's say we fast forward, transportation plan has been adopted, say, then will these all be... Staff will go through these again and provide us another list in a year of what we can remove? Is that just the way this will work?
Your Worship, yes. Having a review of these things is probably a semi-yearly process. So I'm not entirely sure when the most recent go at the old resolutions took place. I understand it was not long after the election.
Well, we just received it, though. We didn't take any action. We received all of them, and then the time before that probably would have been a couple of years.
That's correct. So I think the idea would be to bring it back once every 6 months and to plan on council looking at it, having a look through what they've done over the past 6 months. If things have been completed, they wouldn't appear as they do on this one necessarily because we'd filter that out. But the outstanding resolutions would actually come back, and council would then have an opportunity to consider or reconsider them. Okay.
So really it would come out anyway. Councillor Beddoes?
I'd like to see it remain in until I see the Transportation Master Plan, because there's no guarantee that it is even in there till I see it. So I thought that was a very important issue that we brought up at council with great discussion, and I think it needs to stay in there until we're satisfied that it's being suitably addressed in the transportation plan.
Okay. Councillor Bateman?
So yes, so just a quick backstory on this particular one. We had our committee of the whole in December, and we dealt with parking, and we had a recommendation go forward to council, and I did make that recommendation based on what I'd seen in Langford, and I don't think it needs to be on all roads. That would seem to be the problem with that one. It needs to be an option going forward to deal with parking.
Okay, so we do have a motion. So Councillor McMath, I'm going to call the question, but go ahead. Oh, Tony's motion. Yeah, because there is a motion on the floor, so I'll just call the question and then we can deal with it. Okay? So all in favor of rescinding? Opposed? Councillor Beddoes, Mayor Tate, Councillor Bateman, and Councillor McMath are opposed. Motion's defeated, and it stays. Okay? Other items that Councillor Bateman, did you want to talk about?
I have a statement, but I'll wait.
Okay. Are there other motions or anything that anyone feels should be rescinded? Okay. Back to Councillor St. Pierre.
Yes. There's another one around farm building compliance, or getting some sort of form together for doing farm buildings, and have to track it down again, which unfortunately I guess that was for me 664 would have been the item in the column. So just great weirdness. Anyway, I'm just going to provide...
Just let us get to where you are. So that'll be page 57 in the package then, 2018-437 Bylaw Services.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Okay. So speaking as someone who's actually living on utilizing ALR land and building on ALR land. We don't necessarily, as a small farm, have a great deal of money for a lot of things. We do build as well as we can, and we build reasonably well, and most farmers do. I don't know that this is actually going to actually help in terms of things like food security or actually having better farm buildings. I'm curious as to the intent, given that it's difficult to ensure compliance. I would suggest removing it would be easy since it hasn't been there, and I'm not sure what problems arose that brought this sort of thing forward.
Okay, so a question I have is, it says under comments, awaiting arrival of CBO. What is a CBO?
Chief Building Official, Your Worship.
Oh, right. Okay, who's starting with us in August?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's assigned to bylaw. So we can just wait for that opinion. Okay. It'll be dealt with when that person joins our team. Okay, Councillor McMath.
I just want to make a motion that we rescind all of each of them on the list with the exception of the dog park, and that it just be moved to low priority for staff.
Okay, so we've gone, there's actually two that I don't think that what is on the screen in front of us is correct. I think those are the resolutions that we wanted to keep. So, because the staff report had, right? So, so I think the resolution should be that council receive the resolutions, rescind the resolutions as recommended by staff, except for those three, and then you don't have to type them all out.
I would like to identify them in the motion just to make sure that they are correct.
Okay.
Just take a second.
That's fine. We'll just stare at Ms. Royer Collard as she types. It's always helpful. It's not a race, Councillor Bettles. I'm fine with I just don't want to say that anything is low priority. I think it's just as things emerge, we'll discuss them, because dogs in parks are becoming a problem. It's not our number one priority, but it's still a live priority. So I'd rather not make it a low priority, because then it won't happen, because it's been talked about since I've been on council, and it's just a problem that continues to get worse. So I think it's when the Parks and Trails Master Plan comes to us, it's an opportunity. I'll be looking for some actions there that we can start to take. Mr. Schaefer?
And Your Worship, again, once we have the groundwork laid for our work planning, we can delve into that, and because this was discussed and it'll be part of the Parks and Trails Master Plan, it's something that we'll consider when that comes forward, and place it appropriately in the queue of recommendations that come out of the Parks and Trails Master Plan.
Yep. Good. Okay. Anything further? Call the question. All those. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bayman, you had a statement you wanted to make.
Can I make it after the motion?
Unless it's.
I don't know.
I would just make it now.
Okay, I just wanted, we've been talking about boasting here. We need to celebrate what is going on in this place. And I just wanted to note that there are 150 items on this list. I've added them up in my obsessive compulsive fashion. 84 of them are marked complete. 40 are in progress. And in progress column, there's council remuneration. Hallelujah. Memorial benches, a tree bylaw. Bike BC Little River Connector. Crackdown on the Tin Grotto, which I would suggest be bumped up. on the list, given that they're trying to sell those townhomes on Air Manor Road, and that is difficult business, I would imagine. Park washrooms, trails, there's so many good things going on. So just to send thanks to staff and the recognition that everything is processed, but a lot is being completed. And just a minor criticism, it would be great in future documents to see the date of the actual resolution included here. Otherwise, thank you.
Well said, Councillor Bateman. Thank you. So on that note, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. So procedurally, I've missed the opportunity to have public input because that should be after every item. So I will just turn to see if our member of the public has any comments thus far.
I very much appreciate that.
But you'll need to come to the microphone and introduce yourself, Ms. Bernard.
Go. Thank you. Diane Bernard. My address is 2018 Penang Road. I'm retired, so I'm not involved in a commercial operation. I appreciate that the dog park is still here on the agenda. It is becoming a serious issue in Souk, and all we have to do is look at other municipalities, is how they operate. We have children out there. We have people on walkers, canes. We have people like myself who are very nervous around dogs, and you have people, and I run, and I have been attacked by a dog in the Souk Park. I just wanted to say that we have also huge, one park in particular I'm very concerned about, and that is the Whip and Spit. I believe that's becoming quite run down because of the serious amount of dogs and people, and that we no longer have shorebirds there because the dogs love to play with the birds, but they're shorebirds and they're nesting, so the dogs keep that now in steep decline. So I appreciate that very much, and it needs to be dealt with, and we need to come into the modern times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Do you mind turning off the microphone?
Turning it off?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, but before we do, this reminds me of something that I just wanted to raise in our council procedural bylaw, so I'm just going to backtrack to that. Is it necessary for members of the public to provide their home address? Because I would feel uncomfortable providing that publicly. When I lived alone, I never even had my name in the phone. I didn't have my address deliberately in the phone book when I was single living by myself. My name was abbreviated with my last name and my phone number, but I would never have my address in there. And that was like a thing that I was told when I was like just younger. You just did. So now, like, I wouldn't mind knowing if people, do you live in Souk? Do you live in the Juan de Fuca? Like, where do you actually reside, so that we know that for the context? But to have people actually state where they live, it just seems, I don't think it's appropriate anymore to ask for that or to insist on it.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I agree. I think times are changing. I think they used to, very specifically ask for those addresses so they could determine, if they were opposed to a development, well, do you live a block away or do you live 50 blocks away? Are you really impacted by what we're discussing here? I think that's why that happened. Maybe we could ask which neighborhood they live in. That might give you a little more proximity to the matter at hand, but we can certainly have more discussion about that.
Because even like in a public hearing, it's anyone who believes that their interest is so affected. So, there are those that live in close proximity, but then there would be others that are that still feel it's an inappropriate development for Souk, and their view is just as important as those that live next to. But if our chambers always had, say, someone from the mainland here, not that that would happen, or another jurisdiction saying, oh, you and Sug need to do this, this, and this. It's kind of like, well, you don't even live here, pay taxes or anything. Like, why are you trying to tell us how to run our town? Although, if someone came here, because you do have people that invest in property, they visit here, they tour here, like, we always welcome this feedback. So I think just, but to actually insist that people give their address. And sometimes people don't, and I don't push them for it because I just think it's a bit of an invasion of property. So when we're trying to encourage people, I think that's an important piece, is just to remove that component. What do others think? Councillor Beddoes?
Being a person that puts the business directory together with the residential listings, we get a lot of requests not to have addresses in for the safety reasons.
Yes.
And, it wouldn't matter to me if, as a councillor, if somebody comes up there and is complaining about something, then it's up to me to ask, are you an immediate neighbor, are you down the street, or whatever it is, because to me it does impact. I mean, I put a lot of credence in the immediate neighbors because they're impacted the most. Not that you dismiss anybody that's 10 blocks away, but I think it's passé to request them to come up with their address. I'm good with the name.
Yeah, name in your municipality. That might be helpful. Because usually if people are impacted, they tell us, I'm this house right there. They'll come up and tell us specifically, and this is what I look at. And when it, so, okay. Councillor St. Pierre?
I was just going to reiterate, people generally provide that information.
Yeah.
What I really would like to know is whether or not they live in Sug.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in Sug, what's your name and do you live in Sug? Would be...
Well, their name and where, and I don't mind because you have people. Machosen's a close neighbor. Juan de Fuca is Otter Point. It's you have people that recreate out here. So it's just what Can you give us your name and what municipality or do you reside in? I think it's sufficient. Okay, is that good for everyone? Okay.
Yeah. Through your worship, I don't believe it's actually in the bylaw, but if it is, I will bring forward that in with the revised bylaw for consideration.
Okay, and then I'll just procedurally make this change at the next meeting. Okay, good. All right, thank you for that. Okay. All right, so number 3 is committee appointments. So there's been a few that have come up that we actually need to make some appointments to. So right now, there's one for the Tumut Treaty Advisory Group. So my request would be that council appoint Councillor Logans to the Tumut Treaty until Councillor Parkinson just as an additional alternate to that committee. So if I could have a mover for that. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then I believe for the Juan de Fuca distribution that Councillor Logans is the alternate to that, and Councillor St. Pierre is on the Water Commission. So Wednesdays at Fisgard and Councillor Logans is at the JDF. And at this point, there has been no need to provide another alternate, so we can just leave that one. And then it turns out neither group actually met in April, so that's why there was a concern that people weren't getting notices, but there actually wasn't a meeting. So you actually didn't miss anything, which is great. There was also a request that councillor consider a liaison. Sea Park, the Sug Historical Society, and the Community Association are looking just to have a working group form, just because of the close proximity that those three are in connection to. So, from my view, because Councillor St. Pierre is on the museum, Councillor Beddoes is on Sea Park already, it seems a bit of a fit there for that in particular. It's to discuss, it came from the museum, just Councillor Beddoes.
I talked to Lee Boyko, and there's concerns with Sea Park, Community Association, and the museum with the adjoining lands, and doing some sharing and talking about the future, just to get together and hash some things around. I know Sea Park and the museum talk already, but we bring Community Association to the mix too. Just informal discussions about the future.
And this is mainly to do with the campground, because the community association tends to do overflow parking for events that are held at Sea Park and the museum, and then when the night, so I think it's the intent, from what I understand, is mainly to deal with that particular area of lands.
Through your worship, also with the addition onto Sea Park
right.
for the gymnasium, we're losing some parking. So parking is going to be at a premium. And right now, there is some shared parking between the museum and Sea Park. So just to formalize that and have a plan. So.
Yeah. Councillor McMath?
I don't know.
I'm still unclear. So is this just a group, or you're being a liaison for all of those groups altogether, or are you being a liaison for each of those individual? What exactly are you looking for?
I looked at it as sort of a task force, just to talk to some immediate needs in that area. I mean, the way I sort of got it was, it's not for all of these things, it's for what's happening in those particular areas. So, for example, an example would be when the night market is on, people tend to park at Sea Park. When the fine arts show is on, then you'll have more traffic in the museum lot, and then sometimes over in the campground. So when there's the duck race on at the flats, for example, then people park at Sea Park. They're all using each other's lands, and then we have a notice of motion coming forward from Councillor St. Pierre to talk about other, because then there's been discussion that there's some other district-owned lands in that area, to look at what that might look like in terms of how, because then we have, when the night market's on, people park on the ministry's right-of-way by our Welcome to Souk sign, and then sometimes across the street. So there's just the case of, I think, a working group to talk. I just sort of looked at it to talk about those specific things.
Yeah, I guess if, through your worship, I guess if we start a dialogue and there's nothing come of it, then we just cancel it.
Yeah. So it's just to formalize some appointments. They'll go out, have these meetings, report back to us, and then we can see what that looks like and formalize it if there's a need to do something more than that. Councillor St. Pierre?
I think there's also an opportunity here for us to basically get some serious stakeholders in that area together in terms of considering what really amounts to the cultural and recreational hub of Souk. I mean, it's got the museum, Sea Park, and all the rest. And Phillips Road is a pretty serious intersection in terms of a gateway to the community. So looking at the aesthetics of that place, looking at long-term parking considerations, looking at what's going to happen with adjoining lands that haven't actually been developed yet. I know the museum needs room to put all its ironworks and all its industrial machines into, and maybe do something more than just store it, but who knows. So there needs to be a larger plan and some discussion to see what's possible.
But then I think there's also a need that council have a liaison directly to the Souk Community Association that talks about other things. Outside of that, this I sort of looked at was that particular section of land, because there is the construction that's going to happen at the rec center. So then what does that look like? And then we've had some approaches to actually do something more for beautification at our entry to Souk around the rock. And then we learned that when the Sea Park's new sign went in, the power got cut that we used to plug in for Christmas lights. So there's just things like, what can we, and it wasn't, because they didn't want us to have Christmas lights, it's because people didn't know what was what. So I think it's just to sort of have that conversation. And then if we do, another example would be when the district did a run of banners. We had counted up the banners. We want developers to put in banners, and some of our banners went up on the Sea Park property, which looks nice because then it ties all the way through. But then it was the case of, why are we putting banners on Sea Park land? And it's like, okay, well, the consistency throughout the community looks nice. It's still one taxpayer for all of it. Is it really that big of a deal that they're there, right? There's banners everywhere else, and I think it looks nice to have that all the way through. So it's just to have those conversations, and then to come back as needed.
Yeah, through your worship, it was also the Sea Park, Steve Noki requested it as well, to sit down and have just some talk. And to Councillor McMath, it's more to do with just that particular area. Mm-hmm. When we go to deal with the community association, it's with this area, everything we do with the community association. So it's just a small part, mainly the small part, it's the flats, which it's a good part of our land out here. But we'll just see where it goes. I think it's a good idea. They asked for it, and these people that contribute to our community in a big way, I'm more than happy to meet with them and see if we can help.
Yeah, but just given Councillor McMath's work with the, particular, I'll say the ball fields an example, then Councillor McMath, if you're interested, perhaps you could join that conversation as well, and then sort of...
Yeah, I guess I'm just like, I love the idea. Not like, don't get me wrong, I think that's a great idea. I just see that's more like the district is facilitating a meeting between multiple groups. So then I don't really know, is that like a committee per se? And then who is coming to this group? Is it like the liaisons, and will there be a liaison for each of those groups? Just...
We already have, in some ways, we already have two formalized. So like Councillor St. Pierre sits on the museum's board, so he's already that, and then Councillor Beddoes is already on CPark. So that's where...
So that's you two just sitting there again? Like, I know, like, who else will be there?
Yeah, so, well, then it will be someone from the museum, someone from the community association, someone from CPark, all just having this sort of task force conversation. They'll report back to respective ones, because rather than having all of the museum, because they're already here on behalf of the district. But I think it would also be helpful, I don't think we formalized a liaison to the community association, although you've started doing some grassroots work. So that's where I thought, if you're there, and then that could eventually evolve out, that there is a need for, because I've never heard, like, don't quite know if the community association wants a liaison or not, so I don't want to say we're going to formalize, but then maybe this will be some way to start that conversation, and then you can come back. These two have already been made, so it's the case of perhaps having, if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you can sort out amongst yourselves meeting times, not have our staff have to do that. It would be up to the three of you and your respective to make it happen where, when, whatever, and then to report back as needed, or put notice of motions forward or whatever as appropriate.
Through the chair, I'd have no problem with that suggestion. The three of us do it. No problem.
Okay, so then it would recommend then that council appoint Councillor Beddoes, Councillor St. Pierre, and Councillor McMath to a community task force involving the Sault Historical Society, CPark, and the Sault Community Association, and to report back with their findings. Does that work?
That's great.
Okay. Who would like to move that motion?
I'll move that.
Councillor Bateman. Yeah, because
I want to be proud of it too.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Bateman. Good? And then, so it's you three can figure that out. We're not, myself and staff are not coordinating your meeting times and locations. Excellent. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And was that it for, at this point, for outside committee liaisons? I think that was all that we needed at this particular... Oh, it's the Climate Change Action Committee. Do we have someone... When we did the terms of references, we haven't had somebody actually say, oh, I would like to be on that committee. I think maybe Councillor Beddoes, maybe? Or no?
Sure.
Okay.
To your worship, in all seriousness, I think it's crucial to have somebody of Councillor St. Pierre's credentials to be on it as well. I wouldn't mind serving on it as well, as a balance for the redneck section. No, I shouldn't say. Don't quote me. Don't quote me. No.
She's already tweeted it.
Oh, there it is. I'm done. Yeah, it's Ted.
Okay, because I think we learned that there isn't necessarily a limit of councillors that are on this.
I'd be happy to serve on that, and I'd be happy to serve with Councillor St. Pierre if there could be more.
Councillor Bateman
is very strong in that department.
Yeah, I think I've discussed publicly before, I'd recommend that Councillor St. Pierre be the chair of this committee, and as the former chair of the Climate Change Action Committee, I would like to be involved in some capacity.
Okay.
So we can have three of us or more.
To Ms. Machado.
Come join us.
Through your worship, I just pulled up the actual list that from Friday's working group, and it does have Councillor St. Pierre and Councillor Bateman noted beside that committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that helps any.
So, okay. So we can have 2, or do we have 3, or what does that look like?
If you really want it.
Because you would still be able to give comment at. I don't want to overwork a particular councillor because we have other things to do.
Sorry, I don't have the terms of reference in front of me, but it will depend on what was actually adopted in the terms of reference with the number of committee members, or sorry, council members.
Yeah,
but I don't have it in front of me, but we can certainly bring it forward as unfinished business on Monday, perhaps, rather than trying to make a motion without knowing the specifics today.
Okay. So why don't we all think about that, and then we can have a look at the terms of references again, and we can just make that final on Monday. How's that? Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, the only reason I suggested it differently is that I have a great deal of respect for my colleagues, but they're from a certain spectrum or a certain part of the community, and I just thought for balance, not that I'm anti anything, I'm not, I'm actually pro saving this planet because it's very important to me, but I think I could balance it out a bit, and I get a lot of contacts from the community that I'm slowly winning over for this climate change. So I think that for balance, that's why I suggested I be on it.
Okay. Well, Councillor St. Pierre?
I was just going to say that even if the terms of reference don't necessarily allow it at this point, we can always do something about that.
Yeah.
So
do you want to just have this come to the council meeting, and then we can just finalize it then? What do you think about that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Excuse me, Your Worship. I can send out more information on that tomorrow to council, and then you can consider it before Monday's meeting.
Yeah, because I mean, there's still time. We're still getting advertisements out and applications in, so it's not like the committee is meeting next week anyway. There's a bit of time up our sleeve there. Okay, good. Was there anything else for committee appointments that was outstanding?
3 amigos.
I think it would be a good.
I don't see anything urgent that we have developed terms of reference for on the list from Friday. So.
Okay. And then there were no other, I don't think we had any other liaison requests outstanding at this point either, from my recollection. I spelt your name incorrectly? Oh. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Any comments from the public on committees? Nope. We look forward to your application.
Everybody jump up at once.
Okay. Yes, there will be an advertisement posted in the near future. You will need to fill out an application for consideration. So, yeah, when that goes out, we will certainly have that. Okay, so the next piece was that after attending the AVICC, there was some discussion about an opportunity to debrief that and also to talk about the next one that's up and coming. So that's why I sort of put this on here for any sort of debrief or follow-up questions or any thoughts that you just wanted to talk about. Is there anything from anyone? We missed you there, Councillor Beddoes. Yeah. Councillor Bateman?
Well, I could do 5 minutes on this one, but I won't. This was quite a big deal for me, and I think it was a wonderful bonding opportunity for our group, Councillor McMath, Councillor Logans, myself, yourself, and Councillor St. Pierre. And it was up in Powell River, which is a remarkable place, a complete community. It's got a hospital, it's got a historic, it was a wonderful place to have this thing hosted. We put in some very long days at the convention itself and some great networking opportunities. For myself, I want to follow up with Tim McGonigal. He's a Lake Cowichan councillor who figures we need some coordinated promotion on the Pacific Marine Circle route. Another is with Ty Ullman of the District of Powell River's Let's Talk Trash team. And they have a very advanced branding. They have a guide for event planners, support services like community mugs, dishes, utensils, mobile rental dishwashing trailer. I know Councillor St. Pierre also talked with Ms. Ullman, and now Zero Waste Soup's Wendy O'Connor has been in contact because they're prepared to share a lot of their materials. So some highlights for me was learning about social procurement, in which local governments on Vancouver Island can seek a kind of a bonusing situation with people. You probably understand it better than I. Social procurement.
I think
maybe
we should continue the
Councillor. Yeah, I could. Social procurement. A contractor comes into a community, is seeking a contract, and they could add to their contract a 5% bonus, a social procurement, which would see funds go towards community amenities. Basically, it's kind of amenity policy. And in the case of Cumberland, they had a road constructor come in, and at the same time that constructor put their crew to work building trails with labor and equipment, and that was a significant piece. And there is a social procurement coastal communities social procurement initiative that with the SUP has the option of joining and learning more about all this. There was also Childcare BC's New Spaces Fund, which when we have our childcare's need assessment complete, it will allow SUP to apply for as much as $1 million in provincial funding to build childcare facilities. And I'll cut short here, but a couple of the highlights for me was hearing Premier Horgan describe Mayor Tate as my favorite mayor, which I thought was pretty cool. Also, Highlands Mayor Ken Williams issued the Municipal Climate Change Challenge, which we've signed on to, along with other growing number of municipalities. And his contribution to lowering his carbon footprint will be to staycation on Vancouver Island this summer. And he plans to stay in Souk, yes. So that was kind of cool, too. So, yeah, there was a whole bunch of other things. It was a fascinating experience. Thank you.
Councillor McMath?
Everything Jeff covered is spot on, and the one thing that was most surprising to me was that some of those resolutions passed by like 6 votes, which was a council. So before going to this, I wasn't sure in the value of going, and it wasn't until we were actually there and the debates were taking place, and when these resolutions passed by 6, and I felt pretty strongly about some of them, that really validated us all going for me and absolutely justified it more than ever. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor St. Pierre, anything?
Yes. Mayor Lisa also held a meeting in a separate venue dealing with what local governments could do about climate action. And that was extremely well run and well attended, and some good ideas came out of it. I expect some further action from her quarter on that in the near future. So that was excellent too.
So with the resolutions, items that passed at AVICC will roll on to UBCM and to FCM accordingly, and then you'll see there sort of a similar type of format where it'll give a block where they're consistent with UBCM or FCM policy, and there's always the ability to take out and all of that. So there tends to be a lot more, but the debate is always very interesting because you can go in and it's like any item on an agenda. You come in with what you know, and then the conversation happens, and then you hear from another community that's impacted in a different way, given a different perspective. So very interesting conversations. But the floor at UBCM it's significantly different, so it's always interesting. There's the resolutions committee in particular chairs it. The staff is up there, and there's 4 sets of microphones throughout the whole assembly, just given the size of it, and they have to run it quite tightly. And similarly, any resolutions that are not debated, usually because of time, then get referred to the executive, and then it breaks down to executive committees. So I chair health and social development, so some may flow into my particular committee. We give recommendations to the board, or where clarity is required because you don't have the debate, then it's reaching back out to the sponsoring organization for clarity on what they're doing, or recommending that they re-refer it back again. So it'll be very interesting. So I'm glad that you were all able to attend. And some thought, of course, would be for Sue to considering hosting AVICC in a future year. So just putting that out there, that it's the off season. It brings in a lot of people. There's partners. It's a great opportunity to promote the community. We have hosted it before. And it's just a matter of whether or not, with the growth in the organization, if we have the hotel capacity or not, I'm not sure, but Airbnbs have come along, more B&Bs have opened up and the like, so it's just something I'll put out there for that, as well as other conference hosting opportunities. Okay, so then the next one, of course, is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which is coming up at the end of this month. So all of those preparations will come in place. You may have already signed up for a study tour. Delegates are limited to 2. However, when you get there, there's also a big desk open where you can go, and if you see something else that captures your eye, there's wait lists. They'll switch items around. Sometimes due to popularity, they start to add more. So there'll be one study tour of a certain nature that'll be held 4 times, say, because of the amount of people. So you may not, and then people change their mind, or there's other things happening at the same time, or so there's often opportunities to go out and see something different. Resolution is a bit different. The board there is quite large, and so because there's people from all over the province, they have to move through them rather quickly. There will be an address from each respective leader of each party. It's likely all will show up this year because there's an election in October. They haven't always attended, but they're always well done. The keynote is always well done. The host city, of course, likes to promote their city and everything that they have to offer, so it's busy. And then there'll be other, sometimes there could be a lively protest, or there's other groups that will start to have other things happen. There's always the FCM program, and then there's other things that happen outside of that as well that you'll start to get invitations to. So it's quite fascinating. Remarkable trade show. Remember that you have weight limits on your luggage. In terms of weight. So don't pick up all the paper. Often they'll have a flash drive or email you something, because there's a lot of very interesting literature. Yeah, so one time when FCM was in Whistler, thankfully, I must have picked up 30 pounds of materials. It was my first conference. There was a lot of interesting things. A lot more things are electronic, but we were coming back by vehicle just by the sheer weight of stuff that I had actually picked up. A lot of stuff. Councillor Beddoes.
Can we have Councillor St. Pierre be our translator? Or we're there?
I will be helping.
Yes, you will also find that it's bilingual. So there will be headsets available. So, often I found that your iPhone headphones will work in the translation device, and because people will be speaking in both languages all the time, and sometimes you walk around with your headphones on and you forget, and people don't tell you for a while. Not that I have done that, but so it's fascinating, and it's wonderful to meet other people from across the province. And then, of course, I sit on the FCM as an observer to the board, and I also sit on the committee there. So I'm attending. UBCM is covering my expenses for FCM, and I will also be facilitating, or I'll be participating in a panel on cannabis. So they're getting a different perspective from across the country on what different communities are doing and how that's all being done. So I'll be working on that in the next little bit, and we'll be at that particular presentation. And I don't have to translate my materials because the translator will be there as well. So any questions about FCM? It's really busy. There's a lot that happens. Councillor Bateman.
I know at UBCM there's opportunities to set up appointments with provincial ministers. Does that happen at a federal level? No. No, so they don't all attend. So some will and some don't, and sometimes
like UBCM organizes that as part of UBCM work. I haven't seen that at FCM, although often there are ministers that will be there as part of, so I've sat there and they have been in panels, and then you can ask questions particular, or often talk to them outside because they'll sort of be about on certain issues, so there's always that opportunity. Our MP is not able to attend, and he has to be in the House, so they would probably send somebody different. Likely the leader of the party would be there and maybe some others, whereas UBCM does make those arrangements. And it's often the government of the day that makes themselves available to attend for that reason. And for us, we now have the opportunity to meet with ministers as we need to, so we don't always have to rely on UBCM. But when you have people coming from Prince George, they're not able to get to Victoria to meet with their minister. So often the priority goes in that particular area, though we have met with ministers there anyway. So no, that doesn't typically happen, but they will be there in the plenary session. So in the next little while, the schedule will be available, and there'll probably be an app you can download, and there'll be pocket schedules, because then you can see, because the schedule does shift a lot. Yeah. Anything else? No, just watch how much you pick up. There is a program as well. There's FCM by the book. So if you bring a book from SUPPLEMENTARY, then they collect children's books, ideally a children's book by a local author, and there's a draw, and then they'll send that whole collection to your local library. So one thought is to go into the museum and pick up a book that you can take, and they're all on a shelf. It's quite, even youth fiction as well, there's quite a spread. The board meetings do this as well. And then there's also different draws that you have to search around in the trade show. One of them one year was you could win $100,000 worth of playground equipment for your community. And they have those sorts of things. There's different draws where you can win stuff that goes back to your community. So something to keep in mind. Yeah, you have to hunt for them. You'll see the Grey Cup in the Shaw booth.
So who among us will get that children's book?
We can all
bring them.
Yep.
Can we? Okay.
Yep.
Councillor St. Pierre gets 10% off at the gift shop in...
Actually, any life member.
I know, we all do.
Actually, we all qualify. Okay. So that's great. So any comments about either of those two from the member of the public? Okay. Okay, 20th anniversary celebration. So here's an item that I wanted to raise with you. So at a recent meeting, we had supported our municipality hosting movie night in the park at John Phillips Memorial. We made that commitment, and part of it was to look at what would be an appropriate weekend. So some dialogue that I've had would be that Saturday, August the 17th would be a good date for that. And then I was kindly approached by Tim Collins here, and also had a meeting with both himself and Rod Sluggett, the publisher. So the Soup News Mirror would like us to consider co-hosting a community event. Our event is, because it's just a movie, it's just in the evening, and because it has to be dark, it would be about 9 o'clock at night. So we're eliminating a large number of people because it's 9 at night. So anyone with young children or a senior just would not be able to attend due to that particular time. So what they are proposing is that they would take care of the community picnic or community event that would happen, the family fun that would happen earlier, say between 12 or 1 o'clock all the way up to the start of the event. So some things to consider would be that, and this is where if council endorses this in principle, we'll get more information to come back at a future council meeting as to what things would cost. So some of the things that would come in that we would look to cost would be to, like the park event fee, where is there power, event insurance, a waste or recycling station, perhaps use of a district pickup truck, working with our fire department to set up a first aid tent, maybe borrowing a golf course, yeah, just plan one in, golf cart. And while we should have our 2 washrooms in place, 2 would be minimal, like just adding some more porta potties to it. Anything outside of that would be agreed by both parties, and then the intent would be to have a counselor work with myself as a liaison, and as well as some staff support, which would likely fall more into parks. Someone from parks, head of parks would be awesome. And something I thought would be, during the day, the SUPMIR would organize the activities or the entertainment. So the intent would be to have SUP local performances. So we know that we have, many students that perform. We have winners of talent shows. We have the Amber Academy. We have the Harmonies Project. We have a lot of hidden talent. We have a Philharmonic. We have local musicians. There's quite a large spread. There could be even other jugglers or other things that we don't really know about, but the intent would be to showcase SUP talent, and some of that the Mirror would look at and having maybe some sponsorship from local businesses, and I said that they would have to have a business license, current, to be there. And then we could look at having, as we talk about it, what other sort of things would we want to set up. So we're talking about banning plastic bags. Maybe Transition SUP could be there and give some examples of, here's some food wrapping materials, or here's some great straws, or here's some other things. We could consider, our swag was very popular at Sukarama, and one thing I thought would be kind of fun, and maybe this is just me, is that in our Suk section, we could have our own rock painting area. So we could supply paint and brushes, maybe some rocks. People could bring a rock, and if they left it with us, our park staff would put it out. And then I thought, what if we got like a really big rock and for our 20th anniversary, and people could come by and just paint stuff on it, right? So it'd be like a community thing, a community rock that people could, and then we could roll it and have it in the park. Right? Yeah. And add to it. And then I thought, well, we have art bombers that, just 1 second, I'm so excited about this rock thing. You know how we have like our fish that show up in planters and the like? So what if we had some things that people don't necessarily take away, but they would just do little bits of, and then our park staff would put them out. But I like having a big rock, and then we can roll it, right? And then that's our 20th anniversary rock. Councillor Beddoes.
I just wanted to comment how much you're scaring me. Having put on a lot of events in this community, and knowing that the papers want to do something special, I think they will pick all our brains for all these things. Some good ideas. But
yes.
This rock I really worry about, but it's okay.
I want to do the rock thing. I already said that would be our booth because we have our rocks. That wouldn't be too much, I don't think. Councillor McNutt?
I think that should be the entire theme, this community rocks. And so you have rock music, like rock bands.
Now it's a family event. It has to
painting station. What are you? Rock is for family?
Okay. Yeah, actually, yeah. My son likes interesting music. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
That is all.
Like a Suk rock. Suk does rock. So the daytime event would all be coordinated by the Mirror. So we take care of our movie. So from 9 o'clock onwards, that is our responsibility. The movie, we talked about if the museum's film can be digitized in time, it would be a short 20-minute trailer. Maybe we could put one of our Suk tourism movies on as like a little commercial. I don't know. We don't want to have it go on for too long, but our responsibility is 9 onwards, in addition to providing some of the infrastructure. But coordinating the lineup and getting all of that and getting the vendors, that would all fall on the Mirror. They would promote and publicize the event to get it drawn in, and then we would just coordinate and work with that. Mr. Bateman.
Yeah,
Councillor Bateman.
I think this is going to be very exciting. It was interesting to learn that Mr. Collins has some background touring with the Dixie Chicks and the Tragically Hip and other Great Big C. So I think maybe Councillor Beddoes could be, given all your direct experience, might get involved in.
I'd be happy to liaison with. I know Rod very well, personal friend for long years, and Tim. We've actually talked about it, so I'd be happy to liaison with the council and staff, because there have to be some staff, and certainly take any suggestion that the mayor might have of painting rocks or anything like that. I'm sure will all be considered.
Yeah. Rocks are done, not considered.
I do like the big rock idea, but the key is who will be pushing it. So I think we as a council will need to take this on when Megan's back, Councillor McMath is back in business. We'll be ready to roll that rock.
Council will
roll away
it.
the stone, I think.
It'll be a non-publicized event.
But we
The
could
rock just
vary
magically
that
moved.
seed give out too, and give out other seed tomorrow.
Yeah, so at this point it's just looking, because this needs to go to council, and I did provide our CAO with sort of a listing of these items so that we can just have a sense of what the cost would be. We'd formalize it at council once we know the amount, perhaps designated from council contingency, because we don't have a specific amount outlaid in the anniversary, and then continue on. So motion I'd be looking for is that the Committee of the Whole recommend council support co-hosting a community picnic with the Souk News Mirror on Saturday, August 17th, along with the movie night. On that, yeah, along with the movie. And further, the district, yeah, movie night, and further that council designate Councillor Beddoes as the liaison for this event, and okay. And that Councillor Beddoes is the liaison for the event, and be the liaison for the event. And lastly, that the district host a rock painting station.
Yeah.
I want it in the motion, please. And then that way, if staff come back and say, that ain't, I just want to know if that's an absolute, I think it's fun. I can't see any, I don't know. It'd be fun. A rock painting tent station. Yep. Yeah. Okay, and that's moved by Councillor Beddoes?
Sure, just one little thing on your rock.
Yes.
We can't have a big rock put on a pallet.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
easy. You don't have to roll it around. And then when it's finished, it's going to stay all nice, and you can move it to, I put it in the circle out there underneath the flag from Kimball.
That's right. We don't have much in the park. Like, there's not even a sign for the park. Like, we have some benches, we have some trees that have been planted. It's our 20th year, so we talked a bit about some kind of art, but how would we pull that all off? So I thought this would be like a shellac it after it's painted. People will add their little bits.
Well, if you look at that rock in front of that house on West Coast Road,
Yes.
It's very pretty. I'm trying to give you support here, Mary.
Yes, I know. Thank you. That's
It's
where I got the
doable.
idea.
It's doable.
I saw that and thought that would be a neat idea.
I'm sure Mr. Collins has got it written down.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So just get a rough idea of what those cost breakdown would look like, and then we can just make sure we're good with all of that. Oh, any comments from members of the public on the 20th anniversary celebration? I just really like the idea of having something during the day for families. I think that's important. It's just for us to try to do it. It just It's kind of a lot. It's better to work in partnership with somebody. So thank you, Mir, for coming up with that. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. And there'll be speeches from all of us at the beginning. Okay. No new business, so look for a motion to adjourn, please. Oh! Qu'est-ce que c'est? Rise and reporting.
The Rising reporting all the Committee of the Whole motions to be brought forward at the regular meeting next week for adoption by Council.
No, I don't recall ever seeing that before. Really? Okay. Because I thought okay, never mind. I just thought the motions are that the committee referred to council so that they all float automatically. Anyway, motion for this, please. Moved by Councillor Bateman. All those in favor? Opposed is carried unanimously. Motion to adjourn, please, by Councillor St. Pierre. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And thank you very much, everyone. 9:30.